Hey everyone, my name is Rooster, and welcome back to Mechabellum. In today's video, I wanted to highlight the power of Void Eyes in their current state. They're very meta, and a lot of high MMR players have started to pick up on them, and that's what I wanted to make a video about. Now, I do expect them to get nerfed somewhat soon, but hey, maybe after this you can at least try and, benefit from them for as long as it lasts. Now, my opponent here is a very strong 201 player. I faced them during the EU weekend tournament that happened last Saturday. And well, as for the starter packs, I decided to go for a Badger opener here with some Fangs, and I am a Marksman specialist. My opponent is a Giant specialist, starting with Sledgehammers and Hounds, and they're going to be defending. I'm going to be playing aggressive because I quite like that with this type of pack. I think Badgers are quite suited to lower range scenarios. I would say the same thing is mostly true for Void Eye, although some of the techs do allow it to be played in long range. And I kind of knew that my opponent was going to be playing defensive here, considering their opening pack. Sledgehammer Hound, just at least Sledgehammer often indicates a more defensive posture. The way I'm setting up here is the Fangs to screen for the Badgers, and I'm going to buy double Void Eye behind them to, have some DPS. I already have Chaff Clear, and what I'm going to be playing towards here in the long run is often something like Scorching Charge Counterfire. I really like this type of more like aggressive, explosive Badger build. But you can also go for things like range and Scorching Fire or Counterfire Scorching Fire if you like, which is perhaps a little safer. You're not relying on your Badgers to die to Chaff Clear, but I've had good success with the Badgers running in, and I feel like I get better results with them, putting fire on the ground than I do when I try to play them with things like range. Now, I immediately get a Void Eye level up here as we do manage to grab that tower. It's a close fight, but I win. And early Void Eye levels here are massive. This unit has crazy DPS, and it mainly has crazy DPS because of the current cost of Charge Shot. At only 100 with 175% attack boost, it sends the DPS of this thing through the roof, and that's why it's been so popular. You've got a lot of cheap techs that are very non-committal. You can always move out. You didn't invest a lot in the units, but it forces some pretty big responses out of your opponent, typically. With them going into Giants, something like Raiden, even things like Titan, and you can either keep going into Void Eyes, they are quite capable of taking down even the bigger units, or you can opt to, counter whatever unit your opponent goes for with a more appropriate unit. It's kind of up to you, but you often do end up kind of forcing your opponent to do something about these Void Eyes. Now, on round number 2, we get an immediate unit reinforcement. I decided to go for the Phoenix. I didn't mind having a little bit of extra DPS. Phoenixes are very good on aggro, especially in the early game. They just tend to do well. They move in quick, and the bonus damage here is going to be nice because I do know my opponent is a Giant specialist, and yeah, look at that, right? Round number 2, immediately we have a Vulcan on the board. He decides to pick up the Steel Ball, pushes into my left tower. I did put a Fang there to protect, but Fang won't beat that. I think Crawler would be able to, but I just prefer the Fang a bit more because it doesn't walk in as much. And of course, it can also deal with some of the aerial options in case my opponent went for a Phoenix there to attack my tower with. Right side is going well. We at least managed to take down the enemy Vulcan. But now the debuff comes through, and that is not ideal, as my level 3 marksman does end up going down. My Phoenixes are taken out, and I don't get a default win, which would have happened if we took out that marksman. Round number 3, we get Laser Sight. Opponent pretty happy to pick that up. I usually end up skipping a lot of items with this comp. I just don't think that the Void Eyes really need much. They're only 100 cost units. So, you're often going to have a lot of them on the board, and investing into a more expensive item just isn't going to benefit you that much. I would take things like heavy armor for the Fire Badgers, but that's often about the extent of it. There is an argument to be made here to take just Laser Sight and chuck it onto my Phoenix if I want to keep it around, but I run aerial mode on my Void Eyes, and I can always just go air, in which case my Void Eyes would be better than untech'd Phoenixes. So yeah, I like to play it greedy. and just kind of, you know, make sure that I have as many resources as I can to be able to invest into this comp, because it is quite tech hungry. And granted, the techs are cheap. I already went for charge shot here. I'm gonna need a lot more, right? I'm gonna need range, maybe suppression shots, maybe even aerial mode. I'm gonna need scorching charge on the Badgers, maybe counterfire. I really like going double defense enhancement early with this comp, because the bonus tankiness just helps a ton, both for the Badgers but also for the Void Eyes when they have to kind of fight for themselves later on in the round when the Badgers are gone. This round will go well. We managed to win. The Phoenix is going to make its way over. Is that marksman going to turn? We'll have to see. Either way, win or lose here, it's not a big deal. My Phoenix manages to pick up a level. I will win, but that's not really, you know, damage to brag about. Round number 4, improved melting point there gets picked up. I could have gone for orbital bombardment here, but there wasn't a lot to hit. You know, it's mainly just a level 2 Vulcan and a couple of smaller units that I should be able to kill. So again, I would rather just keep the money. I have 4,000 hit points in the bank. Orbital is better for my opponent, so, you know, even if I do take it, it will end up being worse for me. And I'd rather take the loss and have something to show for it in terms of, you know, a monetary advantage, rather than just kind of use the orbital, but it still ending up losing for me. I am going to try and beacon away some of my units. My opponent, kind of surprisingly, didn't pick it, went for improved melting point instead. They are a giant spec, so, you know, they have easier access to it, and improved melting point can be quite solid with something like multi-melter. So the moment I saw this, I already kind of prepared for the idea that improved multi-melter might show up at some point, because melting point makes no sense into these smaller units, and the only tech that it has that is capable of dealing with these smaller units is diffraction, right? So that was kind of the information I get here. I do go for the Boom Badgers, and you can see that they do a rather good job of clearing the chaff, at least on this side of the board. Sadly, they don't quite manage to take down these crawlers. I went for a deep flank to catch those, but it didn't spawn in fully, and so those crawlers end up surviving this round. I don't think I'll be able to take down that Vulcan. Currently, my Void Eyes don't have range yet. That is something that is on the list of things to do. But yeah, Badgers here just too slow, and they will take out a good amount of enemy units, but it will be a round loss. Now we enter round number 5 with more unit reinforcements. Lots of early reinforcements this game, round 2, round 5, so it is rather accelerated. And I wasn't looking for anything specific here. I'm not too afraid of Wraith. My anti-air is not amazing, but I think it's good enough with this level 2 Phoenix. And, well, if my opponent really decides to go for a Wraith, I will just have to counter it appropriately. And I probably would have just gone aerial mode, to be honest, because Charge Shot Void Eye is perfectly fine against Wraith once it goes aerial. I go for the Rhino instead. It sells for the most. I sell one of the Rhinos. The other goes onto the deep flank here on the left to try and pressure that tower, hopefully get a debuff. And here comes that first improved melting point. I go for more Void Eyes. I go for more Badgers. We range our Void Eyes. And you can see that the game plan for this is relatively simple. I buy Badgers, I buy Void Eyes. I take my Void Eyes, I take my Badgers, and that's pretty much it for most of the game. You don't need a ton of chaff, a couple of crawlers or fangs up front to prevent insta-locks, because scorpions can be a bit of a pain to deal with. And yeah, apart from that, you don't need a ton of chaff. Void Eyes are powerful because they've got great DPS, but they also have a great pack size at 3. For a DPS unit, that's kind of premium. Right? 3 units is a lot harder to take down for most units, and it limits the options for your opponent. So as long as your opponent doesn't go for things like Raiden, you're kind of fine. And even if they do go for Raiden, then the tankiness of the Badgers comes into play, because Scorching Charge Badger can tank a shot from Raidens and still trigger. And this is especially true if you get level advantages, double defense enhancement, all that good stuff. So it's less about really going for, you know, a ton of chaff. You'll buy some in the back. It's more so about using the tankiness of the Badgers and kind of the inherent tankiness and pack size of Void Eyes to get you through that early round and late round. I am going to go Wasps here, though. If you are going to buy some chaff, Wasps are fantastic because they don't burn, right? One of the other reasons you can't go for a ton of chaff is because you're setting the ground on fire, and it's on fire for both you and your opponent. So building a ton of crawlers right behind here doesn't make a ton of sense. I do often go for kind of late crawlers because this fire will dissipate relatively fast enough for these crawlers to do something. But yeah, if you really need more chaff and more badgers is not doing the trick, you can always try to go aerial with some wasps. And well, I saw the melting point and I wanted to grab some of these. I do run EMP. I love wasp as a response to multi-melter with the EMP on board, because one, wasps are just good into melting point as a chaff unit, and two, right, with the EMP especially, just turning them back into regular melters makes it a nightmare for the opponent to deal with. Now here I am calling a bit of a bluff. That Rhino last round did fantastic, and I said to myself, what if my opponent doesn't do anything about it? And I have good reason to believe they wouldn't, because if you look at the melter positioning, this melter was too far forward, but you don't really want to put a melting point all the way back there. It would have to just kill a Rhino that oftentimes would get sold, and then it would have to travel all the way forward and do nothing. So we managed to get in by realizing that my opponent is in a bit of an awkward spot. They need to buy, you know, units in different parts of the map, and putting a melting point back there just doesn't make a ton of sense for them if they're expecting it to be sold. So that's why I call their bluff, and it works out. We get another round victory. Now the opponent is down to 2k hit points. You can see, by the way, how much these Void Eyes are doing. I didn't even mention the fact that my opponent went for some Boom Rhinos themselves. One here in the top corner, which is doing all right. One here in the front, which is just getting one shot. The Void Eyes just have so much damage that it doesn't stand a chance, and so it doesn't really do that much at the moment. I am going to go for a Rhino this round. There is a spell. There's a mobilized battleship as well that I was a bit afraid of, but Rhino Assault is cheap, and yeah, I really want to make sure that I don't get debuffed here. I do have double defense enhancement, and now I'm going to buy more wasps because I expected my opponent to commit into energy diffraction to be able to deal with pretty much everything on my board. So we pre-counter here, and well, we kind of keep the tempo going, right? I'm in the driver's seat right now. I don't really want to let loose of the pressure that I have, and this just generates another problem for them to solve. If I don't go for EMP, normal wasps with no techs, multi-melter would probably be good enough. But now that I double tech, yeah, suddenly massive problem. All of my badgers go in, the chaff gets cleared, and this is a very convincing round for us, as we keep a ton of small units alive. We don't play giants, but you know, if you win this convincingly, you will still do bucket loads of damage. And so yeah, pretty successful. Round number 8, opponent down to 247 hit points, and poof, I mean, you know, pick of the litter now, right? We can try and go for any cheese, really, to close out the game. I decided to go for quick teleports. My opponent goes for additional deployment slot. And whilst I sold my Rhino, my opponent last round again kind of disrespected that flank, thinking, all right, well, he did it twice. Surely you wouldn't leave it there 3 times in a row. I could have gotten away with it, but, you know, I was a bit too afraid that it would get countered, and so I wanted to retrieve the resources. I guess that is my bad. But now we're going to go back on that flank with the Crawler and the Wasp. We have the quick TP to make sure that, you know, we can spawn in rapidly, and hopefully we can grab a debuff. My opponent goes for Photon Coating Farseer, which was expected. He just needs to make sure that he doesn't get EMP'd, right? You could go for something like Mustang as well, but the problem is that the melting points are so far forward, and the chaff gets cleared so quickly that I don't think you would be able to protect your melting points from EMP. Like, a couple of Wasps will connect, and once they do, you'll be severely crippled against all of these Void Eyes. I went for a Suppression Shot as well, just to make things even worse. This can't even be blocked. Photon Coating does not negate Suppression Shot, so if you get hit, no matter what you do, you will be losing 30% of the range, and that's why this tech is so powerful, especially, you know, coming in at only 100 cost base. Wasp here on the flank, looks like it should be able to get in. We'll have to see. A couple of Hounds and Fangs are turning, so I guess it will take a little bit of time, but yeah, let's see how this goes. Void Eyes have connected with the melting points, damage through the roof. I mean, we're talking level 2, level 3, level 4 Void Eyes. Easily able to deal with these level 1 giants at the moment. And yeah, it's not really close. I don't necessarily get the tower that much quicker through the flank, but I mean, just every single side of the map is overwhelming in force. And yeah, I mean, this kind of showcases the power of the Void Eye comp. There's lots of things you can do, lots of units you can play this with. Again, in this particular game, I'm showcasing Badger with Scorching Charge, which I really like. I've had good success with it. You just get to really hammer on all the techs, get the charge shot on round 2, round 3, sometimes even round 1 if you're quick supply or cost control. And yeah, just watch your opponent kind of struggle to find a response. If they respond too quickly and they grab something like a Raiden, you can always bail out and build something different, right? You can go Badger Melting Point, you can buy Aerial Specialization Marksman, whatever you want, really, and you'll be fine. I do think that something like Raiden makes the most sense into this, but keep in mind that the Badgers, once they have these type of techs, are too tanky for Raidens to one-shot, so you will often still be able to trigger the Scorching Charge effect, which is, you know, what's clearing all of the chaff. And if your opponent goes for EMP Raiden, you can always just Photon Coating with something like a boat, which turns out to be a pretty good counter to Raiden in general. So yeah, there's a lot of things here you can do. I like to run like full carry Void Eye because I love going aerial mode. I think that aerial mode Void Eye does just fine into most flying units. Even into Raiden it does well. And yeah, Suppression Shot is nice because it allows you to even play this in standard. You can play basically any like standard comp with Arc Lights, Vulcans, that type of stuff with Void Eyes because of Suppression Shot. And yeah, you get a relatively high amount of range. 165 is not bad at all. That's more than things like Arc Lights will get if you're not counting, you know, Elite Marksman and that type of stuff. And on top of that, if you ever connect with the enemy carries, they lose 30% range. So, you know, with that taken into account, Void Eye really isn't even that low range, you know, because of the text that it has. So, yeah, I mean, this was a pretty quick game. I couldn't find a good, like, response from my opponent. It's pretty doomed at this point. The Wasps are just way too out of control, so not even, like, a big air move here really works. You get overwhelmed by the Wasps. And yeah, you really have to Photon Coating your units, which you can't really easily do without, you know, also finding a counter to all of the Wasps. Anyway, if you like this video, please leave a thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought about this game. Have you been playing a lot of Void Eye in the past week, or is it something that you're going to try and test for yourself before it very likely gets nerfed somewhere this week? At least I hope. If you want to stay up to date with my latest content, please consider subscribing. And if you want to see me play live, check me out on Twitch. With that being said, take care, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.